If you are the Son of God, command these stones to become loaves of bread. But he answered, It is written, Man shall not live by bread alone, but by every word that comes from the mouth of God. Guys, the temptation of Jesus is a crazy story. Now, it's not an allegory, it's not a metaphor, it's not symbolism. This happened, right? We can trust that it happened mostly because Matthew doesn't really believe in metaphors. Scholars say he was probably autistic. So, that kind of does that. And this is basically not even it's a biography. This is a straight biography of his life. What I'm so obsessed with right now is that Jesus was tempted. Um, First of all, that first verse, Jesus was led by the Spirit into the wilderness to be tempted by the devil. That's crazy to me. I don't want to break that down right now because that would take way too long. That verse, every time I read it, is insane. But what I do want to look at, I don't want to say is like the tactics of the devil because I feel like that's overplayed. Unless you don't really listen to sermons and stuff like that, then okay, maybe it's not overplayed. But it's just this idea of like just the levels of it, right? I've always asked myself, why did Satan in that order, right? Like why the stones into bread? Why then, hey, Jesus, fall off this temple and see if you don't get hurt. And then bow to me and you will have all of these kingdoms, right? I think if we were to apply this to our lives, we we could get a real strong sense of maybe what we're going through right now in terms of like why is that sketchy thing seem so voluptuous? You know what I mean? But yeah, okay. So I think what we need to understand though, first is the context of Jesus gets baptized and then God from heaven says, This is my beloved son in whom I am well pleased with, right? When we see that, first of all, the whole theme here is that God is totally pleased with Jesus before he did anything, before dying on the cross, before healing a bunch of people, before preaching the gospel, before anything. His first act of obedience, I would say, right? Because he tells John, like, hey, I'm doing this to fulfill all righteousness. And he's pleased with him, right? And he goes down in the water, he comes up, he receives the Spirit, and then by the Spirit he's taken into the wilderness. It's crazy. But here we see that he is affirming Jesus by saying, This is my son. Okay. This is my son. And then he's tempted after fasting for 40 days and 40 nights. Now, I read this and I realized that everything I was taught was a complete and utter lie. No, I'm just kidding. I was taught that he fasted from food and water for 40 days and nights. There's no real mention of this. I think it's the assumption, but there could also be the assumption that he kind of just like lived off of the land kind of deal, and that what because like my dad, for example, he will when he fasts, he fasts kind of regularly. He'll fast like breakfast and lunch and just eat dinner, you know? So he'll do like a 12-hour fast or an 18-hour fast or something, which, yeah, intermittent fasting and this and that. I get that. It's become more popular because people have realized the health benefits. I guess I got to break down, what fasting is now because oh my goodness, I didn't even think about that. That's like a cultural thing and people do it, like health nuts do it. And not health nuts. People Yeah, I guess people who just care about their health, honestly. It's not just like the meatheads in the gym. Okay, so yes, fasting has great physiological benefits, right? Especially over 48 hours. It cleans out your gut, it cleans out your liver, right? Which are super duper important things. Um, but hey, you gotta talk to a doctor and make sure that you can handle, you know, 48 hours without food or more. But it starts you on ketosis. It does a whole bunch of stuff. It essentially kind of resets your body in a way. So there's that. But fasting isn't just starving yourself, right? when I fasted, I fasted for the first time 72 hours the beginning of this year in January. And what had happened was something that I was not expecting. I was expecting heaven to fall down and me look at the face of God himself and be, awed and come out like rambling like some crazy man who just saw, aliens or something. The complete opposite happened to me. I became so grounded. And so, okay, yeah, yeah. So as tell this experience, this isn't what happens every time. And I say that because I was actually in the middle of it and I was asking like a pastor friend of mine. And he was like, yeah, no, every fast is different. You're going to get something different out of every fast just because that's just how it is. Like, it's not a recipe for anything. And I was like, oh, that's so interesting. So I was expecting that, but I totally got being grounded, just being totally aware of the people around me, which in God's amazingness, like that's probably exactly what I needed. Well, yeah, no, and that's the case. In a spiritual context, when you fast, the focus and the intent is to get closer to God, to be more sensitive to God. And that happens as you fast through prayer and through all these things. Now, for those who maybe aren't quite spiritual yet, I would say that fasting, though, does put your body in such a stress level that it definitely, for sure, reprioritizes your life if you are attuned with it. What I mean by that is when you're starving for 3 days, that, that dent in your car that you're so worried about, or, the bills that are stacked up and you're like, I don't know how I'm going to pay this. All of it goes away. And you're like, all I care about right now is a cheeseburger. You know what I mean? And so it really reprioritizes your life because not only are you wanting the cheeseburger, you start thinking, dang, man, I haven't seen my family in a while. Or, your brain just starts saying, dude, this is actually what's important. Like, what are you doing? And so with that being said, when I was fasting, I felt like, dude, you need to focus on your physical material life. It sounds counterintuitive. I understand because, godly people, spiritually people should be living with nothing and just be walking around butt naked and praising the Lord. I get it. Or homeless, not butt naked. I get that that might be the misconception or whatever the case, that might be the thought. But what's happening is I got married. So January, I had this thing. Hey, you need to focus on real life, having things and having that structure for you. And I was like, what? That's crazy. Why would I ever do that? I want more of God and, to be like John the Baptist, basically. And then I get married I've been dating this whole time, right? But I get married in April and then I buy a house in October. So yeah, I think God was right on that one when I felt that push to be focused on real life and the people around me and creating structure and all these things. And that holding on to that word really helped me when I had to make wise decisions, not necessarily moral decisions, but when I was, caught between two decisions of, am I going to make my physical life a little bit harder so that I can maybe have more money to, I don't know, buy more equipment or whatever the case is, to, or not even, I don't know, just to, because I don't need it. Really, that's essentially what it is. It's like, do I really need this? Do I really need that? Or do I put the money in and invest in having security and having things that won't break down and all that? And so I held on to that. Like, hey, focus on that, on real life, on security, on structure here. Cool. And yeah, that was all in that fast. And so that's like a mystical thing, maybe. Maybe it was very psychological. I think if you're listening to this, you're not quite in the faith. That's great. I welcome you and I will always welcome you. And so at the very least, that is what tends to happen. Just the reprioritization of life happens when you fast. Of course, don't fast for too long if you have health problems and stuff like that, and you should really talk to a doctor about fasting. If I don't know, I don't talk to a doctor. I don't have a doctor. I'm minority, middle class, maybe less than middle class. No, I'm pretty middle class right now. I'm not gonna lie, but that's just not our style, right? We don't go to doctors unless we're literally dying, and that's just how it is. So yeah, I did it. Was it a gamble? I don't think so. Maybe someone would think so, but do it at your discretion is what I'm saying. But okay, that's fasting. Oh my gosh, that was so long, and I don't think I answered the question. Fasting is an opportunity to become more sensitive to God and all these things if you are focused on God. Oh, that's right. Because so throughout the fast, you're starving, and I kept praying, like, food and water is not my sustenance. God is my sustenance, and that literally carried me through the whole fast. Just that phrase, and you know what? Maybe that'll be my mantra anytime I do this fast. I'm planning on doing it maybe once a year, or definitely once a year, maybe twice a year, 72 hours. But yeah, maybe that'll be the same, where I just to carry myself through it all. But the idea is I say that because I could not read the Bible. I was so my brain was so foggy. Now that I remember, my brain was so foggy. It was like nothing could go in, nothing could go out except for that phrase. And my prayers were like 2 seconds long. I couldn't focus for the life of me. It was the brain fog was real. So yeah, I didn't do a lot of reading for sure. And my prayer was just one prayer, for those 72 hours. And that might be you. Maybe again, every fast is different for everyone and every time you do it. And so maybe the next time I'll have the energy and the mental, brain space to pray. And I felt guilty for that because, you're taught like, oh yeah, you need to spend time with God and this, that. I was like surviving. I was like on survival mode for sure. So that was rough. But okay. Oh my goodness. That was such a long tangent. The temptation of Jesus. I'll go through them somewhat quick because, yeah. So to recap, Jesus is baptized. God says, "This is my son." Okay. That's the first thing. And then the first temptation, oh my goodness, this is crazy. The first temptation that Satan comes and gives to Jesus is, if you are the Son of God. Now, if you're not too familiar with the Bible, that sounds exactly like Genesis 3, where he just doubting the words of God. God says, "Hey, don't eat from this tree. You're going to die." And then Satan comes and says, "Hey, did he say this? Is it true, really, that you can't touch the fruit?" Yeah, and there's that distinction of eat and touch and all that. But just that trick of doubting the direct words of God. Now, I don't want this to be like tactics of the devil and this and that. I feel like that's so overplayed. What I really want for us to understand, maybe just not even in like a spiritual, mystical level, but just like in real life, when we are tempted, we see here, by our immediate needs first, right? Our immediate needs, yeah, it can be food, right? Like I'm just thinking about, you have a fridge full of food, clean food, good food. Maybe food is already prepped, already cooked, and we're like, you know what? Taco Bell sounds good right now. And yeah, that's not morally wrong. That's not, anything like that. But understanding that, that how are you going to replace one with the other? It's just a moment of, if you just delay your gratification for half an hour before you get home, then you get what's good for your body. You get cheaper, you get all of these things, right? But what about our other immediate needs? Things like love and affection, all these things. Some of us will go from boyfriend to boyfriend to boyfriend, or girlfriend to girlfriend to girlfriend. just to satisfy those immediate needs, right? And they're not. We know deep down, we know they're not it. You know, they are a temporary fix to a permanent problem, or I don't know, like a short term fix to a long term problem, I think is a better way to put it. But we're just trying to patch up broken glass, right? And that becomes the cycle. This is that first level of, let's say, temptation, or that first level of just, um, I don't know, evil or whatever the case is. I also want to bring up that it comes from this insecurity, at least from what we're reading. It says, if you are the son of God, then just turn these rocks into bread. So it's this thing of like, if you're really, loved by God, then he's going to give you that blessing for that immediate need. And then Jesus says, man shall not live on bread alone, but the words of eternal God. So it's this thing of, look, yeah, I have this immediate need. And yeah, good God gives good gifts, but I don't need those gifts. I need God. That's deep, man. That is a deep thing if we understand, right? And again, this is first level. This is what takes us to the next thing. And then the bigger demon from here is then what I think is identity, right? If you're the son of God, jump off the pinnacle of the temple and throw yourself down, because the Bible says that they're going to protect you and that you're not going to get hurt. And so I think that's poking at his identity. Am I really the son of God? Am I really, for us, are we really saved? Are we really loved by God? Are we really, whatever the case is? And again, if you're not Christian yet, or I mean, let's not say yet as this. I mean, yeah, my agenda. Look, guys, I'm trying to convert people here. You know what I mean? I'm trying to teach people here. But if that's not you, then like, are you loved? Are you who you are? Right? That just in that basic sense. And what ends up happening is that we do stuff to try to prove that, right? This is a common one. Like, you don't feel loved, and so you start pushing people away to test them. That's not how you test friendship, guys. That is your one-way ticket to be alone forever. And I've seen this. I've done oh my gosh. So back in the day when I was dating a lot and trying to, figure out love and all this stuff in the world, I would push the most amazing people away from me, because subconsciously, like, looking back, I just didn't deserve it. I just didn't, I didn't want that. Like, I didn't want it on my conscience that I was slowing people down, that I was, hurting people and this and that. And so I would push people away. I remember, like, specifically one girl, I made it obvious to her that I was talking to other girls just so that she would leave and get hurt and just move on. Because it's better to hurt her now than it is to hurt her later. Guys, humans are complicated, right? And it doesn't make us less complicated when we're trying to answer these questions of, am I actually blank? And so I'm not here to say, stop doubting yourself. Doubting's for losers. That's not what I'm saying. But I've been thinking about, like, man, what are the pros of being faithless? Like, what purpose is there? What affirmation is there? And like, I don't know how someone can live suspended in gravity. How can someone just kind of exist with no maker, exist with no order? To me, that just doesn't resonate. Like, how can you answer, I'm worthy and I'm accepted and I'm loved, if there is no ultimate lover, acceptor, or creator? That just doesn't make sense to me. It doesn't resonate. Now, for a Christian, mind you, a lot of them, don't read the word. They don't know Yeah, I mean, they don't know what God wants from them or knows of them or any of these things. And so they're kind of just living in limbo, just like as someone who doesn't believe. But the Bible affirms who we are. We are his 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 creation. We're his sons, actually, if we put our faith in Jesus. And and that comes with all the inheritance, all the gifts, all the dignity and all of these things. Now everyone deserves the dignity that God has given them, whether you believe or not. And this is biblical. But there is like a title now, like you're not just the Commonwealth, you're a prince, you're a princess now. And so there's this different air about a Christian who has deep faith in Jesus. Because again, the Bible affirms us and it gives us security and does all these things. And so I don't know how someone can live well and be suspended in air. That just doesn't make sense. I feel like you'd have to lie to yourself and convince yourself of things that if you were to look at rationally just wouldn't line up at all. But going back, Satan is tempting him, saying, won't God keep you safe? Won't God make sure that you don't harm yourself? He's talking specifically to Jesus because these were prophecies. And he says that you shall not put God to the test. And so Jesus is being conscious, right? He's understanding that although scripture is true, although the promises of God are true, it shouldn't be something to test. It should be like a fence that protects us as opposed to, I don't know, like a bodyguard that follows us wherever we go. Maybe, I don't know, maybe that's not a good analogy at all. Maybe that's not even that thoughtful. But again, he is tempting his identity. He's questioning his identity. He's saying, dude, if you are the son of God, then you fall down and the angels are going to pick you up. Like, you're not even going to hurt your heel. Like, you need to be the perfect sacrifice. Now, if we look forward into his ministry, how many times he was almost stoned to death, put to death, and he was not harmed. That, wow, I'm getting chills. That is God fulfilling his promise that not a hair on his head will be touched until the day of his sacrifice. That to me, that's like, oh, that gives me shivers because Satan is tempting him. Hey, like, just do it now. Like, just throw yourself off this building. You're not going to get hurt. He's like, don't look. When the time is right, God will protect me and God will do what he says he's going to do when his timing is right. And the timing was right when he was preaching the gospel and he almost got killed like 4 or 5 times and he escaped miraculously, right? The Chosen actually does this scene where like they all freeze and he just like walks off. It's so weird, but it's like, yeah, how else do you explain him just like disappearing? Like he doesn't like poof vanishes, but he like slips away. But it's like, dude, if the whole crowd knows who they're gonna fight or, try to kill, stone to death, it's like, how can you slip away from the crowd like that? And so, yeah, that's so funny. They definitely took creative license. But dude, can you feel that what Satan was tempting him with was exactly how God was going to protect him later on God's terms. And I think about marriage, a lot of us are like, dude, I want my husband, I want my wife. And so we're always tempted, right? We're always tempted of, hey, but God promises me a good wife, a good husband, whatever the case is, and this and that. And so, but we don't wait on God's timing for that. And we don't trust in God. And I think that's going to be the theme, is that we need to trust in God. And that actually does bring me to that last point. The last point is, bow to me and I will give you all of these things. Now, Jesus us, if we were rational, right? Yeah, sure. We would get everything now, we would get everything. But what's amazing is that all of that was going to be his eventually. It's about delaying gratification. And I think that's one of the biggest themes here, that as I'm talking, I'm listening to myself and seeing delaying our gratification, stopping ourselves from getting our immediate need and waiting for the opportune time, for the right time to get something that we need. Because God will provide a way there, and it'll be so much better that way. And it'll be long lasting, and it'll be perfect. And so, what I see in this temptation is, okay, fine. You denied your immediate need. You are staying strong on your identity, fine. But if you are who you say you are, shouldn't all of this belong to you? And that's how I read it. Now, I don't think that's necessarily what it's saying. I don't know, like in the sense of, look, there's multiple ways we can run through this story, right? But just where I am right now and how it reflects in my life, I see that question. If you are who you are, shouldn't you have this by now? Now, that could go back to spouse and the marriage situation. I know there's a lot of us who want that. I'm a decent human being. I'm good. I'm wifey material. I'm hubby material. You know what I mean? Like, where's that girl? Where's that guy? And that can gnaw at us. I think with me specifically, it is with this podcast, to be honest. It's with, like, look, it's not arrogance to say, like, I was built to be intelligent. I was built to ask good questions. I was built to understand God and all these things. I don't want to say I'm there because, there's always more to grow, but let's say comparatively, and that's the key word, isn't it? Comparatively, I might be smarter than the average person. I might be a little more articulate. It might be more fun to talk to than the average person, but that's comparatively. Dang. And comparatively, so I'm out here confessing sins now. If so, comparatively, I am better at these things than some people. Not better in general. I'm not better than anyone, but at these things, right? I'm better than the average person. Then shouldn't I have the subscribers? Shouldn't I have the respect? Shouldn't I have these things? And I don't know what necessarily it looks like for me to have that right now. What the temptation is for me to have it right now. Maybe it's to, promote myself using money or whatever the case is. I do want to go grassroots on this, but it just could be me wallowing in this envy. I don't have what these people have, and I think I'm as good, or I think I'm better, or I'm smarter, and I don't have what these other people have. That can just spoil the fun in itself, right? They say envy is the thief of joy. And my God, do I know that? So that becomes that last temptation is, okay, you are who you are. You know who you are. Why don't you have the things that you deserve? Yeah, I'm caught up in that for sure a lot of the time. And so this is a conversation that Jesus is having with Satan, right? And so he says, "Begone, Satan, for it is written, you shall worship the Lord your God, and him only shall you serve." And the devil left him, and behold, angels came and were ministering to him. I think for me, or let's say for someone who doesn't believe, right? And maybe even for us, we don't have to say, "Begone, Satan." You have to say, "Begone, Nelson. Begone me," begone, like, leave, dude. I am to serve God and God only. And this is the thing that I have to cling to all the time is, dude, I'm not building my kingdom here. Like, I did all of this out of obedience. I'm walking in obedience step by step. I'm doing what God is telling me to do. Whatever outcome is for the glory of God, because I'm not doing it for myself. If I was doing something for myself, then the fruit would be mine, right? If I was planting in my vineyard, then I expect my fruits. but I'm planting in God's vineyard. I'm toiling the fields of God's fields. And so those aren't mine. I'm a worker on that field. I'm not on my own field. And I tried that, and I had, like a like a 1 square foot field, and that was me trying to get real nitty gritty in there and do that. And it's sad, At the end of the day, it just felt pathetic of me just trying to do things for myself. Maybe we're not there yet of understanding that, but those who can understand, and I guess I'm talking to Christians now, we're not toiling our own fields. And so what ends up happening is, if we understand that, then we understand that we're not doing this for me. We're not doing this for us. We're doing this for God. And that he deserves the worship. He deserves the praise. He deserves the fruits. And in that way, this final temptation of, if you are who you say you are, then you should have the reputation, you should have the things, you should have, whatever the case is, that comes with being who you are. Like, oh, you're a great soccer player. Why don't you have a contract? Why aren't you on a D1 team if you're so good? Why aren't you playing pro if you're so good? Well, that's not quite it, is it? Because I'm playing soccer. If I'm playing soccer for the glory of God, if I'm playing football for the glory of God, basketball for the glory of God, if I'm singing for the glory of God, then all of that is up to God whether or not the fruit comes. And if the fruit comes, it's God's fruit. It's not my fruit. And so I just wanted to leave us with that. We'll pray. God, I pray that you can just instill this humility, God, and this understanding. And I pray that, first of all, that you can satisfy us and secure us and give us the confidence of who we are in you, God, so that the first 2 temptations can die, that our immediate needs can be met by you, God, and that we can trust you to meet those needs, even if it takes a little longer than we want, a little longer than we're comfortable with. God, I also pray that you affirm us, and that we can see that the promises that you've made for us, whether personally in our prayer time or when we read the Bible and we see a promise, God, and we know that that is what you're going to do for us, God, that we trust in your timing. And God, I pray that if we understand who we are in you, God, and we understand your mission for us, and you understand your plan for our lives, God, that we can be patient and be humble to understand that you, God, are the one that will give the fruit, and the fruit is yours, God. And for anyone listening who maybe this is maybe their first Christian podcast thing or whatever the case is, if this is the first time they're hearing this, God, I pray that they that feeling that they have, God, of wanting to inch closer to you, God, that they don't ignore it. They don't think they're crazy. They don't, get paranoid or whatever. God, I pray that they can actually try to seek you. Even if it's personal, no one needs to know about it. They download the Bible app. They find a Bible somewhere. They ask a friend that they can trust. Just a real quiet, personal thing, God, that they can take those steps forward. God, don't start in Genesis, by the way, guys. I know I'm still praying, but don't start in Genesis. Read John, read Matthew, read the New Testament. Go like 3/4 of the way into the Bible and start there, if that's you. But God, I thank you for these people listening. I thank you for the wisdom and for the lessons that you're teaching me, God, that I get to pass on. I thank you so much that you speak to me, that you speak to us, that you're personal, that you're with us. And in Jesus' name I pray. Amen.